Marcus Hale had been in space for only 6 months, yet every morning he woke up feeling like he had stepped into a dream he was not prepared for. The massive halls of the consortium flagship Seraphelion shone with soft silver light, and the floors vibrated gently under his boots, as if the ship itself breathed. He was still getting used to all of it: aliens, diplomacy, and the constant feeling that one wrong move could embarrass all of humanity. He was a junior diplomat, not even fully trained, assigned here because Earth wanted new faces in the consortium. They said fresh minds were valuable. Marcus sometimes wondered if they really meant expendable. Today he walked through the main corridor with stiff shoulders and a folder clutched like a lifeline. Dozens of alien delegates moved past him: tall, feathered Avrani, the crystalline-skinned Reth, and the quiet Vesperians who seemed to drift like mist. Marcus tried not to look lost, even though a lost human stood out easily among such elegant species. He kept repeating to himself, "Act professional. Act calm. Don't trip on your own feet." Everyone on the ship was polite, even kind. But Marcus still felt like a guest who didn't know which fork to use at a royal dinner. Today was worse than usual because a human had been invited, specifically him, to observe the council of Princess Lyra of the Aurelians. She was famous for two things: her brilliant strategic mind and her bright, ringing laugh that no recording ever captured correctly. Marcus had only seen her once, from a distance, but the memory still felt unreal. Aurelians were considered one of the most advanced species in the known galaxy. Their skin shone faintly like starlight. Their movements were graceful, and their eyes carried a depth that made humans feel both seen and small. And their princess, well, she was respected across every allied world. Even Earth's top officials spoke her name with care. Marcus didn't know why she wanted a human observer, but every diplomat on Earth had insisted he not mess this up. He repeated their instructions so often, he sometimes muttered them in his sleep. As he entered the council chamber, his heartbeat thumped so loudly he wondered if nearby aliens could hear it. The chamber itself was enormous, with a ceiling that arched like a cathedral and walls that displayed a shifting view of deep space. Stars floated slowly in the distance, and nebulae swirled like painted clouds. It was hard not to stare. And then, she entered. Princess Lyra glided forward, accompanied by 2 guards in white armor. Her long silver hair flowed behind her like water. Her eyes were a bright, warm gold, the kind that made a person believe she could see straight through them, but without judgment. She wore a simple, elegant robe with patterns that shimmered like constellations. Marcus tried to bow, but instead, his folder slipped from his hand and clattered onto the floor. Dozens of diplomats turned. Marcus's face burned bright red. One of the guards moved as if concerned, but Lyra raised a gentle hand. She stepped forward, knelt gracefully, and picked up the folder herself. When she handed it back to Marcus, her smile was soft, not mocking. "Do not worry," she said. Her voice carried a musical tone that made the air feel lighter. The stars judged no one for nervous hands. Thank you, Your Highness," Marcus managed, wishing the floor would swallow him. He couldn't tell if her calm expression meant she didn't care about the mistake or if she was too polite to react. She continued to her seat, and the council began. Most of the discussion flew far above Marcus's level of experience: trade routes, planetary tensions, Vorn scouting patterns, and consortium internal leadership debates. Marcus tried to keep up, taking careful notes even when he barely understood the context. All he could think was, "Do not embarrass yourself again." But Princess Lyra surprised him. Every so often, her golden eyes drifted toward him, as if checking whether he was following. When he looked confused, she slowed her explanation or used simpler terms. When he finally nodded in understanding, she continued normally. No one else seemed to notice these small moments, but Marcus did. It felt like she cared that he was included, even though he was the least important person in the room. Hours passed before the council ended. and Marcus felt both exhausted and strangely uplifted. Lyra stood as the delegates prepared to leave, and she approached Marcus once more. "You listened carefully," she said. "Humans learn quickly when given the chance." "Thank you," Marcus said, unsure what else to say. "I'm still trying to understand everything here." "That is good," she said simply. "Understanding grows stronger when built slowly." Before Marcus could reply, she turned away, her guards falling into step behind her. Watching her leave, he felt a strange warmth settle in his chest. She wasn't just intelligent, she was kind, patient, and genuinely curious about others. He walked back to his quarters in a quiet daze, his mind replaying the moment she knelt to pick up his folder. No royal from Earth would ever do that. He wondered what she thought of humans in general. Did she find them clumsy? Interesting? Strange? Did she find him amusing in some quiet way? He locked his door, set his folder on the table, and fell face first onto his bed. He didn't even change clothes. The day had drained every drop of energy from him. As he drifted toward sleep, he imagined her golden eyes again, the way they softened when she spoke, the way she looked genuinely curious, the way she seemed to find beauty in everything around her. He mumbled without meaning to, his voice slow, half dreaming. "She has such a kind laugh. Even the way she moves feels peaceful." A soft snore followed. He didn't know the ship's comms system was undergoing testing at that exact moment. He didn't know a nearby channel was accidentally left open. And he definitely didn't know that Princess Lyra herself would soon pass through that corridor close enough to hear every sleepy word he muttered about her. Princess Lyra rarely walked through the lower corridors of the Seraphilion. Her guards usually preferred she stay near the upper decks, where diplomats and officers kept everything neat and calm. But on this quiet evening, she felt restless. The council meeting had stretched far longer than usual, and though she hid it well, she was tired of constant formality. She needed air well, the closest thing to it inside a starship. Her longtime guard captain, Soren, walked beside her. He was tall even for an Aurelian, and his armor glimmered faintly with pale blue light. His movement was steady, and his face serious as always. They walked silently for several minutes, their steps echoing softly. Lyra paused by the large viewing window that showed a drifting cloud of cosmic dust. She watched it swirl slowly, glowing in the faint starlight. For a moment she forgot her responsibilities, simply enjoying the peace. But soon her attention drifted to something else. A thin hum of voices coming through a maintenance panel on the wall. "What is that?" she asked softly. Soren stepped forward immediately and checked the nearby access panel. "It seems to be a temporary comm line. Engineering must be running internal tests again." He frowned. "I will silence it." But before he could touch the controls, a voice came through clearly. It was human, and it was very familiar. "You have such a kind laugh." Lyra blinked. The voice continued, slow and sleepy, as if the speaker wasn't fully awake. "Even the way you move, it feels peaceful." Lyra felt her heart jump in surprise. She recognized that voice. It belonged to Marcus Hale, the human diplomat who dropped his folder earlier that day. She froze. Soren froze. And then, before she could stop it, a soft laugh escaped her lips. It happened so suddenly that Soren turned in alarm. "Your Highness?" But Lyra could not help it. The sound coming through the comm wasn't disrespectful or insulting. It wasn't foolish. It was pure, honest, and completely unfiltered. It was the kind of truth no diplomat ever spoke while awake. She covered her mouth, but her laughter slipped out again. Brighter this time. Aurelian laughter rang like tiny bells, carrying delicate musical notes that filled the corridor. The sound surprised even the passing maintenance workers, who turned to stare. But Lyra did not mind. She felt lighter than she had all day. Soren looked torn between amusement and horror. "Princess, he is asleep. He does not know he is speaking." This is highly improper. That is exactly why it is charming, Lyra said, still smiling. Soren cleared his throat, obviously unsure how to handle this situation. We should turn the channel off. Humans speak without control in their sleep. He has no awareness of what he is saying. Humans speak with honesty in their sleep, Lyra corrected gently. Many species do not. It reveals their true thoughts. She stared at the panel with warm curiosity. Marcus's voice floated through again, even softer this time. She's amazing. Soren coughed sharply. Princess, I insist. Lyra raised a hand, and he fell silent. She was not angry. Her expression was thoughtful and amused. She listened one more moment, studying the tone of Marcus's words. There was no obsession, no rudeness, no inappropriate desire, only admiration, sincerity, and a kind of quiet awe. It touched her more than she expected. After a moment, she nodded to Soren. You may close the channel. He quickly disabled the connection, then looked at her with deep concern. Your Highness, should we address this with the human commanders? We cannot allow rumors to start. The newness, commentaryless. Once of the connerment. The newness conner. We cannot allow rumors. Lyra shook her head softly. It was a harmless moment. Nothing more. But the universe did not care what she wanted. Because by the next morning, the entire deck crew had found out. And gossip traveled fast on a starship where hundreds of species lived shoulder to shoulder. Marcus Hale woke up feeling oddly refreshed. He had no memory of talking in his sleep. No memory of the princess passing by the corridor. And definitely no memory of half the engineering team hearing it too. He stretched, sat up, and prepared for another long day of being painfully average among brilliant alien minds. Then he stepped out of his quarters and everyone was looking at him. Not just looking. Smiling. Winking. Whispering. Marcus froze. Good morning? A Reth engineer clapped a glassy hand on his shoulder. Dream well, human? Marcus had no idea what that meant, but before he could ask, two young Avrani walked by, giggling into their feathers. Was something on his face? Did he wear his shirt backwards? Did humans do something embarrassing in their sleep that alien species somehow sensed? He walked faster. The stairs followed him. By the time he reached the main hall, he was sweating. A human officer finally approached him, trying very hard not to smile. Hey Marcus, rough night? Why is everyone acting so weird? Marcus asked, his voice cracking. Please tell me. I didn't talk in my sleep again. Please, tell me. The officer winced. Sorry, man, you definitely did. Marcus felt every bone in his body turn cold. No, he whispered. No, no, no. What did I say? The officer raised both hands. I'm not repeating it. Marcus grabbed his shoulders desperately. You have to tell me. But before the man could answer, someone else entered the hall. Princess Lyra. Marcus felt his mind shut down. She glided through the room with calm grace, but there was a spark of humor in her golden eyes. The diplomats bowed deeply as she passed. When she reached Marcus, she paused. Not enough to be formal, but enough to show she meant to acknowledge him directly. Good morning, Marcus Hale, she said warmly. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Her eyes glimmered with a gentle hint of amusement. Not cruel. Not mocking. More like she found the situation quietly delightful. I hope you rested well, she added, her tone soft yet playful. Marcus wanted to evaporate. He wanted to jump out an airlock. He wanted to go back to Earth and hide under his bed for the next 10 years. As she walked past him, he whispered to himself, What did I do? What did I say? He had no idea that Lyra had heard every word and that she had laughed. Not with cruelty, but with genuine joy. And deep in her mind, she was already thinking, humans are far more interesting than I expected. Marcus spent the rest of the morning trying to hide behind every tall alien he could find. It didn't work. People still looked at him. Some with amused smiles. Some with curious eyes. Some just waiting for him to do something else embarrassing. He wished he could go back to sleep and restart the day, but he didn't have that luxury. Humans were scheduled for another diplomatic session, and he had no excuse to skip it. He walked toward the council chamber slowly, convincing himself that maybe, just maybe, Princess Lyra had already forgotten the whole thing. But deep inside, he knew that was impossible. When he entered the chamber, he tried to sit in the very last row, behind a tall Vesperian whose body seemed half-transparent. If he sat still enough, maybe the council wouldn't even notice he was there. But his plan failed instantly. Princess Lyra looked up the moment she entered, and her gaze went straight to him. It wasn't unkind. It wasn't mocking. But it was aware. She remembered everything. Marcus swallowed hard and tried to make himself smaller. The meeting began, and once again, Lyra handled every discussion with calm intelligence. She talked about Vorn's scouting activity near the borders, trade agreements with the Arkan clans, and new proposals for shared research. Marcus tried to take notes, but his fingers shook so badly that he wrote in crooked lines. At one point, Lyra paused to let the other delegates consider a suggestion. Her eyes drifted again toward Marcus. His pen dropped out of his hand and hit the floor loudly. A few diplomats turned. Marcus froze like a statue. Lyra's lips curved into a tiny, soft smile. Not a laugh. Not a tease. Just a gentle moment of reassurance. For some reason, that made Marcus blush even more. When the meeting ended, the delegates slowly left in groups. Marcus tried once again to escape, but this time the universe did not allow it. Lyra stepped directly into his path. He almost tripped, but caught himself just in time. "Marcus Hale," she said, in her calm, melodic voice. "Hello, Your Highness," he whispered. "You look troubled." He stared at the floor. Well, the thing is, I may have spoken in my sleep yesterday, and maybe people heard me, and maybe I don't know what I said, and maybe—" "You spoke kindly," Lyra said gently, cutting through his panic. Marcus blinked. "Yes. How much did I say?" Lyra tilted her head slightly. "Enough to know you meant no harm. Enough to understand that humans speak honestly when their minds are at rest." Marcus felt part of his panic melt away. If she wasn't angry, then maybe this wasn't the end of his diplomatic career. Still, curiosity ate at him. "Did I say anything weird?" "Only sincere things," she said softly. Marcus wanted to ask more, but he didn't dare push his luck. She seemed content, so he decided not to embarrass himself further. Lyra continued walking, and Marcus followed without being told. She led him into a side hall, with tall windows, overlooking a star cluster. The colors outside glowed in soft blues and purples, lighting her silver hair with a gentle shimmer. "I have been studying humans recently," she said. "Your species grows quickly. You adapt even faster." Marcus rubbed his neck. "Humans try. I guess we do our best. That is why I want you to join me on a diplomatic mission." Marcus's breath caught. "Me? Why? Me?" "Because humans see things differently," she explained. "You think in unusual ways. Not always logical, but often effective." He wasn't sure if that was a compliment or not, but coming from her, it felt like one. "There is tension on the border," she continued. "The Vorn Dominion has sent scouts too close to our stations. They claim it is routine, but our reports say otherwise." Marcus nodded slowly. He had read about the Vorn. They were strict, cold, precise, and very suspicious of humans. Humans were too unpredictable for their taste. Lyra studied him carefully. "I want you to join as an observer again. I believe your presence may help us understand how the Vorn see humanity." Marcus blinked. "I'm honored. Truly. But I'm not important." Lyra smiled gently. Importance is not always loud, Marcus Hale. Sometimes it is quiet. Sometimes it speaks most clearly when one is asleep. Marcus's cheeks turned pink. I'd really like to forget that part. And yet, she said softly, it helped me understand you better. Before he could respond, Soren stepped into the hall, bowing quickly. Lyra nodded. We will depart shortly. Marcus panicked a little. Wait, I'm going. Now? Yes, Lyra said simply. Unless you wish to decline. He shook his head quickly. No, I'll go. I mean, yes, I'll go. I mean, Soren covered a smile with one hand. Lyra's eyes glimmered again with amusement. They walked toward the shuttle bay together. The hallways buzzed with movement as diplomats, soldiers, and pilots prepared for travel. Marcus tried to look calm, but inside his heart felt like a trapped bird. Lyra leaned closer as they walked. You need not be afraid, she said. I did not choose you so you could be perfect. I chose you because you are sincere. Most diplomats hide their true selves. But you, she paused. You do not. He didn't know what to say, so he stayed quiet. Her words stayed with him, warming the pit of his stomach. When they reached the shuttle, Marcus realized something surprising. The Aurelian soldiers glanced at him respectfully. Even the pilots gave him nods that weren't mocking. Maybe the gossip had made him look brave, or charming, or something he couldn't understand. But the moment he stepped inside the shuttle cockpit, something else hit him, a strong pulse of energy echoing from the far end of the bay. A guard ran forward, shouting something Marcus couldn't understand. Lyra reacted instantly, stepping in front of Marcus to shield him as soldiers rushed toward the disturbance. Marcus's heart hammered. This wasn't gossip. This wasn't sleep-talking. Something dangerous was happening. Lyra turned toward him, her eyes sharp but calm. Stay close to me, she said. For the first time, Marcus realized this mission might not just be about diplomacy. It might be the beginning of something far bigger, something that would test humans and Aurelians alike. And he had no idea that the small, embarrassing moment he had created in his sleep would be the first step toward changing everything. The sudden alarm echoed through the shuttle bay, turning the calm preparations into a wave of confusion. Soldiers moved quickly, their steps loud against the floor. Marcus froze where he stood, unsure what was happening. His heart thumped so loudly he felt it in his throat. He had imagined diplomatic missions would be quiet, full of arguments and long speeches, not sudden danger. Princess Lyra stood firm, her silver hair falling over her shoulders as she watched the commotion with sharp golden eyes. She looked calm, almost peaceful. But Marcus knew she was thinking fast behind that calm face. Soren, her loyal guard captain, stepped in front of her, with one hand on his weapon. A burst of blue light flashed across the bay, and everyone ducked. Marcus threw himself behind a crate instinctively. He peeked over it and saw an Aurelian soldier running toward the disturbance, shouting for backup. More flashes followed, each one brighter than the last. Soren shouted over the noise. Your Highness, we must leave the bay now. Lyra shook her head. Not until I know what is happening. Marcus swallowed hard. He leaned closer to her. Shouldn't we listen to him, just this once? Lyra almost smiled but did not move. Another guard ran toward them, panting. Princess! It's a Vorn device. We found it attached to the stabilizer column. It activated the moment we tried to remove it. Marcus felt his stomach drop. The Vorn Dominion was watching them already. Maybe they wanted to send a warning. Or maybe this was the beginning of something worse. The guard continued. It is not an explosive device, but it is sending out a broadcasting signal. It may be a tracker. Lyra nodded slowly, absorbing the information. A message, then. They want us to know they are watching. Soren stepped forward protectively. This is a breach of security. We must cancel the mission. No, Lyra replied calmly. Canceling it We'll give them exactly what they want. We continue. Marcus's eyes widened. Continue? After that? Princess. Maybe humans panic too easily. But that felt serious. Lyra turned to him, her voice gentle. Fear does not make you weak, Marcus. It makes you aware. And awareness keeps people alive. He wished her calmness could magically transfer into his body. But he still felt like a small human who had wandered into a world too big for him. Still, he nodded. Once the device was secured and removed, they boarded the shuttle. The engines hummed softly beneath the floor, steady and reassuring. Marcus buckled himself in, his hands trembling only a little. Lyra sat across from him, watching him with quiet interest. Have you ever faced danger before? She asked. Nothing like that, Marcus admitted. The biggest danger I've faced was my apartment stove catching fire once. And that was because I burned noodles. I ate nothing. Lyra's eyes softened. And yet you still came aboard this ship. You still joined a mission into unknown space. That is a different kind of bravery. Marcus wasn't sure if she was being kind or honest, but he appreciated it either way. The shuttle lifted gently off the deck, leaving the large bay behind. Stars stretched across the windows like scattered diamonds. Marcus stared at them, trying to calm his heartbeat. After a few minutes, the shuttle entered slipstream, and the stars turned into long streaks of silver light. The hum of travel filled the cabin, oddly soothing. Marcus let out a slow breath. Maybe things would be calmer from here. But the universe was not finished testing him. After nearly an hour, the pilot spoke through the comm. Princess Lyra, we are approaching the border outpost. Scanners show unusual interference. It might be a storm, or something else. Soren stiffened. Vorn? Possibly. Lyra leaned forward. Proceed with caution. Marcus, stay behind me when we land. Marcus nodded quickly. He wasn't planning to do anything brave anyway. His plan was survival. The shuttle touched down at the outpost with a soft thud. The doors opened to reveal a dim room filled with screens and consoles. The outpost was smaller than he expected, almost quiet enough to hear the hum of the ventilation system. But the atmosphere was tense. A group of Aurelian officers bowed as the princess stepped out. One of them, a tall man with dark markings on his cheeks, greeted her quickly. Your Highness, we are honored by your arrival. But the situation is unstable. Vorn ships have been detected, moving in patterns that suggest preparation. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. What kind of preparation? Soren asked sharply. Encirclement, the officer replied. Lyra's face did not change, though Marcus sensed her worry growing. Show me the reports. They moved to the main table, where a holographic map displayed shifting red dots. Marcus looked closely. The Vorn ships weren't attacking, but they were surrounding something. Slowly, quietly, like a trap being built one line at a time. Marcus frowned. Something looked wrong about the pattern. They're not surrounding the outpost, he said softly. Lyra glanced at him. What do you see? Marcus pointed at the map. Look, the ships aren't forming a circle around us. They're forming a curve, like they want to block something behind them, or drive something forward. The officers exchanged surprised looks. Soren leaned over the map. Princess, he is right. They are not preparing to strike us. They are limiting our escape path. Marcus felt his stomach twist. Which means they expect us to try to run. Lyra nodded slowly. They want to control the direction of our movement. Marcus rubbed his temples. Why would they think we'd run? Unless... Lyra's eyes brightened with understanding. Unless they believe we found something they do not want us to see. A soft alarm began to ring. The officers turned, as new data appeared on the screen. A small, faint signal, very faint, was showing on the far side of the outpost. Something hidden. Something the Vorn were circling around. "Princess," an officer whispered. "They are hurting us. Away from that signal." Marcus felt his heartbeat jump. "So, that means, whatever that signal is, it's important." Lyra looked at Marcus with a mix of pride and worry. Soren stepped closer. "Your Highness, what are your commands?" Lyra straightened slowly, her expression turning firm and resolute. "We change direction. We go toward the signal." Marcus stared at her. "Toward it? But isn't that dangerous?" "Yes," Lyra said softly. "But knowledge is worth the risk, and the Vorn's behavior tells us this truth is something they want to hide." Marcus swallowed. The princess was choosing the dangerous path, and he was going with her. As they moved toward the exit chamber, Lyra spoke quietly to him. "This is the moment when fear must become strength, Marcus Hale. Not loud strength, just steady." Marcus nodded tightly. He didn't feel steady. But maybe steady didn't mean fearless. It just meant moving forward anyway. He followed her into the dim hallway, feeling the weight of what was coming. Whatever lay at the end of the signal, it was going to change everything. The lights flickered as if the hallway itself was nervous. Dust drifted in the air, and the hum of machinery echoed in long waves that made the space feel cold. Each step Marcus took sounded louder than it should. It felt as if the walls were listening. Princess Lyra walked in front, with quiet confidence. Her glowing eyes cut through the dimness, like small suns. Soren walked beside her, one hand ready on his weapon. Marcus followed close behind, trying to match their calm but failing badly. His hands were sweating, and his heart refused to slow down. They reached a locked chamber door. The signal was coming from inside. Lyra placed her hand on the panel, but nothing happened. "Manual override," she said gently. Soren nodded and began entering a long code. Sparks flickered along the edges of the door. The moment it clicked open with a metallic sigh, Marcus felt a strange pressure in his ears. Inside the room, faint blue light shimmered like a broken star. At the center, a floating device pulsed softly. It wasn't anything Marcus recognized. It looked like a sphere made of transparent plates, turning slowly like a peaceful orb. Lyra stepped closer. "This is not Vorn technology." Marcus looked at the sphere carefully. It reminded him of something alive. Something that breathed. "What is it?" Soren scanned it with a small device. "Energy readings are unstable, Princess. But it is definitely a message beacon." "From whom?" Marcus asked softly. Lyra moved around the sphere, her fingers brushing the air around it. "Not from the consortium. Not from the Vorn. This design, I have only seen it in ancient records." Marcus frowned. "Ancient? Like thousands of years old?" "Older," she whispered. "Much older." Before Marcus could ask more, the sphere pulsed brightly. A soft, calm voice filled the chamber. Not human, not Aurelian. Something distant and gentle. "Travelers, if you hear this, then our world has fallen. We leave this message for those who come after." Lyra's eyes widened. "This is a distress call." The voice continued, slow and sad. "We were hunted by a darkness that consumes thought. If it reaches you, be warned. It spreads through knowledge, through fear, through silence." Marcus felt chills sweep up his arms. "What does that mean?" Lyra didn't answer. She listened, her body tense. The voice faded in and out. "To destroy the darkness, unity is required. No single species can stand alone. Only together. One. Trower. To the darkness." Static swallowed the rest. Soren stepped back. "Princess, we should leave this chamber now. This could attract Vorn scouts." Lyra shook her head. "This explains their behavior. The Vorn want this message hidden. We. Marcus swallowed. But why? Shouldn't they want help too? Perhaps, Lyra said softly. But the Vorn fear knowledge that does not come from themselves. They will hide a threat rather than admit they cannot control it. Marcus rubbed his forehead. So, this message could help everyone. But the Vorn would rather bury it? One? Yes. The sphere pulsed again. Softer now, as though it had used its last strength to speak. Marcus looked at Lyra. What are we going to do? She stepped close to the device, her face lit by the faint glow. For a long moment, she said nothing. Marcus could see the weight of the moment pressing on her. She carried responsibility for her people, the consortium, and now perhaps the entire galaxy. Finally, she turned to him. We take the message back. The consortium must hear it. Won't the Vorn try to stop us? Yes, she answered simply. But the truth is more important. Marcus felt fear twist in his chest, but there was something else there too, determination. He didn't want to hide. He didn't want to run. Not anymore. We'll help each other, he said, surprising himself. Lyra smiled softly. I know. Before they could lift the beacon, the outpost shook violently. The lights flickered, and an alarm screamed through the halls. Soren pulled up a map on his wrist device. Princess, Vorn ships have begun their maneuver. They are surrounding us completely. If we... Marcus felt a heavy knot form in his stomach. They know we found this. Lyra nodded. Then we must move quickly. They secured the beacon, covering it in a protective case that dimmed its light. As they hurried down the hallway, the floor trembled again. Marcus nearly lost his balance, but Lyra caught his arm gently. You are safe, she said softly. He nodded, though he wasn't sure he believed it. When they reached the shuttle, pilots were shouting about incoming fire. The ground shook again. Marcus could hear distant impacts hitting the outpost walls. Hurry, Soren commanded. They ran aboard the shuttle just as a beam of red light struck the far wall, bursting metal into sparks. The doors closed, and Marcus collapsed into his seat. Breathless. The engines roared. The shuttle lifted off. Princess, the Vorn blockade is tightening, the pilot shouted. We don't have a clear path out. Lyra looked at the map. Red dots closed in all around them. Marcus stared, panic rising. We're trapped. No, Lyra said calmly. There is always a path. She pointed to a narrow gap small enough that only something brave, or foolish, would attempt to fly through. Soren frowned. Princess, that route is unstable. It is our only chance. Trust the pilot. The pilot's hands shook slightly, but he nodded. For the princess, I will try. The shuttle sped forward. The space outside the window filled with streaks of red light from Vorn weapons. The shuttle shook violently as it dodged incoming fire. Marcus gripped his seat until his knuckles turned white. Lyra stayed steady, her eyes calm. The shuttle squeezed between two Vorn ships, engines roaring. The hull scraped something metallic. Marcus shut his eyes tight. Then, silence. The ship burst through the blockade, into open space. We're clear, the pilot shouted with relief. Marcus let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. Lyra placed a steadying hand on his shoulder. You did well, she said. Me? Marcus blinked. I didn't do anything. You saw the truth in the map before anyone else, she said softly. You understood the Vorn's plan when we did not. You helped us reach the beacon. And you stayed despite your fear. Marcus lowered his gaze. I was scared the whole time. Marcus, Lyra smiled gently. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is moving forward despite it. He didn't know what to say. Her words sank into him like warmth. The shuttle returned to the Seraphilion, where high-ranking officials waited. Lyra presented the message beacon to the council, and the room fell silent as they listened. The distress call echoed again, soft, ancient, powerful. Many officials looked shaken. Others looked determined. Humanity's role in the galaxy changed that day. The Aurelians stood alongside them, stronger than before. The Vorn blockade became a warning, but also a sign that truth must not be hidden. After the meeting, Marcus stood by a window, watching the stars drift. His life had changed more in a few days than in all his years on Earth. Lyra approached him quietly. "You helped save more than one species today," she said. Marcus smiled shyly. "All because I talked too much in my sleep?" Lyra laughed, a bright, ringing laugh that filled the room with light. "Sometimes," she said, "the smallest moments start the greatest stories." Marcus looked out at the stars again. For the first time, he didn't feel small among them. He felt human. And that was enough.